Right, so picture this, right? You're in a war zone, tension's high, you could cut it with a knife, as they say, and your job every single day is to disarm bombs. But here's the thing. It's not as an army soldier, like you might expect. No, this is the Air Force. That was Daniel Acosta's reality, and that's what we're diving deep into today. We're going beyond just those headlines, wounded veterans, and really getting into the unseen struggles, the battles they face long after they're home. So Daniel's story, it's pretty incredible. This article, it says he signed up for the Air Force straight out of high school back in 2002. And get this, he chose to be an explosive ordnance disposal technician.
EOD.
Yeah, EOD. Those are the folks dealing with explosives day in and day out. And let me tell you, becoming one, that's not easy. It's almost a year of intense schooling, just specialized training.
It is fascinating, though, because you're right. We often picture Army Marines. We think combat injuries. But Acosta's story really flips that script, doesn't it? The Air Force, they're right there on the front lines, facing those same dangers, even if we don't always hear about it.
Absolutely. And for Daniel, those risks, they became all too real back in Iraq, 2006. The article, it highlights just how crucial EOD specialists were during that time. Every single IED, every hidden explosive, that was a life on the line. And it was guys like Daniel stepping up to disarm them. The pressure, no other word for it. And then, December 7th, 2006, that day changed everything for him. He was doing what he was trained for, right? Disarming IEDs, already a crazy thing to do when he stepped on a pressure plate. But here's the thing. It was made of wood, practically undetectable. This wasn't just any IED either. This one, it was packed with 222 millimeter projectiles. And when it exploded, well, the impact was devastating. Lost his left arm, third-degree burns on his legs, arterial damage, just awful.
It's a stark reminder of what these guys face every day. And it's not just the initial blast either. We're talking long-term impact, physically and mentally. That journey back, the recovery, it's long, it's complex.
You're telling the article, it says doctors initially only gave him a 25% chance of survival. A miracle, really. And what's even more amazing is that his teammate, Staff Sergeant Joe Upton, he used his combat lifesaver training, that specialized medical training for combat situations, and his quick thinking. That's what saved Daniel's life. But surviving the explosion, that was just chapter 1 in this story.
Yeah, 25%. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a number, you hear it, but to think about actually going through that, it's something else.
No kidding. And as I was reading this, it really hit me that it doesn't end there, Surviving that blast, it's like the first hurdle in a marathon.
The battlefield, it's just one part of the story, right?
Yeah.
That fight, that journey, it keeps going long after they're back home.
Exactly. And this article, it doesn't shy away from the tough stuff either. Daniel, he actually talks about his marriage ending after the injury. He says, and I quote, "It was a communications issue," just like that.
It's honest, and that's what's so powerful about it. It's real. And unfortunately, it's something a lot of veterans experience. We get caught up talking about the physical wounds. We forget about the invisible ones. And those impact everyone around them too, especially spouses, families.
He even says spouses have the harder job. Think about that, the awareness, the empathy after everything he'd gone through.
It says a lot about them. And it highlights something we can't forget, supporting veterans, it means supporting their families too. It's a package deal. They're facing these challenges, things most of us couldn't even imagine.
You're preaching to the choir here. And yet, you read this article, and what shines through is his resilience. It's kind of amazing. He talks about actively working to avoid PTSD, traumatic brain injury. He's all about staying active, playing sports, embracing life. Pretty inspiring.
Well, that's the power of the human spirit, right? But it's also a good reminder that everyone copes differently. No one-size-fits-all approach to dealing with trauma. For him, it's staying active. For someone else, it could be something completely different. It's about finding what works.
Couldn't agree more. And that's where organizations like the Coalition to Salute America's Heroes come in, right? They played a big part in his recovery.
Oh, absolutely, the Coalition.
Yep.
Now, for listeners who might not know, they're an amazing organization. They're dedicated to helping wounded veterans, getting them back into civilian life, providing the resources they need to really thrive.
Exactly. And for Daniel, connecting with them, that was a turning point. The article mentions he went to one of their Road to Recovery conferences pretty early on, and it had a huge impact on him. He talks about being around other wounded veterans, people who got it, sharing those experiences, realizing he wasn't alone.
That sense of community, it can be so powerful, especially in those early days when everything's uncertain. And that's what the Coalition does so well. They provide that lifeline, that belonging when people need it most.
It really is about that support system, isn't it? That feeling that you're not alone, that others get it, especially for these veterans. So important.
Couldn't agree more. And that's something this article really highlights. Daniel talks about how the coalition, they helped him navigate those early challenges, Coming back to civilian life, it can be overwhelming. The financial strain, waiting for benefits. The coalition, they step in, bridge that gap, not just with money, but with understanding, with that sense of camaraderie.
Restoring dignity, empowering these veterans to rebuild. And that's exactly what Daniel's doing now, isn't it? He's an ambassador for the coalition, using his story to make a difference.
And that's where it goes from being a story of survival to a story of impact. You know what I mean? To go through all that and then turn around, dedicate yourself to helping others facing those same battles, that's powerful.
Absolutely. And he doesn't sugarcoat it either. He says, and this is a quote, "I come into contact with many guys who are in a much worse situation than I am. After everything he's been through, he still sees that his story, it can shed light on what so many others are going through."
It's that empathy that allows him to connect with other veterans on a level most of us can't even grasp. And think about it. His work with the coalition, raising awareness, fundraising, it's not just about giving back, it's about inspiring action.
He's walking, talking proof that even though the battles might be over, the fight, the recovery, it's ongoing. And he's using his experience to make sure no one has to go through it alone.
Reminds us that behind every uniform, every medal, there's a person, right? Someone who sacrificed so much. And our responsibility to them to make sure they're taken care of, that they have the support and resources they need, it doesn't end when they come home.
We see the visible sacrifices, the medals, the uniforms, but Daniel Acosta's story, it takes us deeper. It reminds us of those battles fought long after the wounds have healed, that strength it takes to not just survive, but to thrive. And it challenges us to look beyond what we see on the surface, to recognize the needs of our veterans, and to ask ourselves, what can we do right here in our own communities to support organizations like the Coalition? They're the ones on the ground providing that lifeline, and they need our help to keep doing that vital work. So let's all think about that today. Remember, even the smallest act of kindness, of support, can make a world of difference in the life of a veteran.